I want to talk to you today about the intimacy of God. It's a hard topic to nail down in 30 minutes. But let's get the ball rolling and see what happens. Here's one thing I know about most people. And this is true just because of my own experience. This is true because of people who I've ministered to. There's several lies the enemy speaks to almost every one of us. And one lie is, God's forgot about me. This was a significant lie in my life, and I would look at, even though I was in ministry full time, I would look at other worship leaders and see their success and see, because I was a worship pastor in Kalamazoo, Michigan for 17 years before we planted in Jackson. And I would look at all these other, and I think, God forgot about me. And I think I'm probably not the only one in the room. You've looked at Pastor Jerry, you've looked at someone you've admired, or even a close friend in your life who's a follower of Jesus, and there's this tension between what you're seeing in them and what you're seeing in your own life, and you think, God forgot about me. The other lie I think many of us believe, and this is probably the most significant one, is either that you're unworthy or not good enough. You think this about God. God has to love me, because his word says so. So, I got to believe that, but he doesn't like me. And there's a subtle difference when you say it that way. Well, God's got to love me. He's God, but he doesn't like me. And so the enemy tells you this lie that you're not good enough. The enemy tells you he forgot about you, that you're not good enough, that you're not smart enough, you don't know enough about the word of God. And we have all of these things, and I've wrestled with all these. I think many in this room probably have wrestled with that tension of seeing other people flourish and thinking, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? And when I think about that, it comes down to recognizing who you are in God. And if you don't recognize that, you'll miss who you are. It's the intimacy with him that's going to help you recognize identity. It's going to help you connect with him and pull you out of those lies like, I'm not good enough, I'm not pretty enough, I haven't done enough. God doesn't like me. He loves me, but he doesn't like me. I don't think I'm the only one. So I want to talk to you today about the intimacy with God, because that's the way we pull out of these lies that we believe. That's how we get past these lies. And this is something that I've never fully cured of, because none of us are fully healed yet. We go from glory to glory, which means from one moment of freedom to another moment of freedom, and it's a process that we're going to keep living in. So I want to read from Revelation chapter 2 today. And actually, let's skip that. Jump over to Revelation 3, so it won't come up on the screen. Hopefully you brought your Bibles. If not, pull out your phone or your iPad or whatever. But I just want to start in Revelation chapter 3. And in Revelation chapter 2, he essentially tells the church in Ephesus, hey, you've forgotten your first love. And he says, return to me. Consider the things that you once did. Do those things and return back to me. And so it's this calling to the church in Ephesus. Even though they were doing good things, they lacked this one thing. He says, you've missed the intimacy with me. You've left your first love. I'm no longer a priority in your life. But Revelation 3, to the church in Laodicea, he gives this incredible invitation. It says in Revelation 3, verse 20, here I am. I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and eat with that person, and they with me. He's saying, here I am. It's not that God hasn't forgotten or that you're not good enough. He's here. He's here for you. Jesus said to the woman at the well, he said, if you knew who was here, you would ask. Jesus says, I'm knocking on the door of everyone's heart. This is not just for the church in Laodicea, because the verse in verse 22 says, whoever has ears, let them hear what the Spirit is saying to the churches. So it's for every one of us who's a follower of Jesus. He's saying, I'm knocking on your door, and I want to come in and sit with you. And I think when Jesus talks about, I'm coming to eat a meal with you, meals are the most intimate ways that we connect with people. Think about when you go on a date. What do you do? One of the first things you're going to do, you're going to have a meal together to get to know each other. Yesterday, we hung out with Pastor Jerry and Rachel, and they took us to this awesome fish place. What was the name of that place? Bortel's? Oh, man, so amazing. I got the smell, and Rachel didn't like it. She's like, I don't like that. But I was like, but listen, so we sit down at a picnic table, we have a meal together, and we're talking, but it doesn't stop there. Because with intimacy, it goes on. So then we start walking around. We go to Pentwater, and we walk around Pentwater a little bit. And so we're doing that. And I think in ancient times, when Jesus talked about having a meal, that's how it would have been. What we do today is we meet like at Applebee's, because you're fancy like that. Like, let's show up at Applebee's. And then you'll say, you get out in the parking lot, you finish the meal, and what do you say? Hey, we should do this again. You get in your car with your spouse, you're like, we should never do that again. But in ancient times, it would have been a meal and a lingering. And that's what intimacy is. It's a lingering with God. So when Jesus is saying, here I am, hey, I'm knocking. It's not that I've forgotten you. It's that you're not listening. And I want to come in. I'm not going to force my way. I'm not going to knock your door down, but I'm here and I'll have a meal with you, and then I'm going to linger in your life. That's where the intimacy starts with. So I want to talk about what is the intimacy of God, and we'll hit that quickly. And then I want to just drill down on how we cultivate it. So the first thing, the intimacy of God. So Jesus says, here I'm knocking on the door of your heart. If you open it, I'm going to come in, I'm going to eat with you. And I think, what do you do when you have a meal with people? When you have a meal with somebody, you start talking about the things of life. And one of the first questions you say, especially if you haven't seen them in a while, hey, how are you? How are you doing? How's your soul doing? This is kind of the conversations that Pastor Jerry and I will have when one of us isn't feeling well, or we're going through something. We'll hear it in each other's tone. You know you have intimacy when you know what someone is saying, even though they're not saying it. If you've been married, you know that. She's saying one thing, you're hearing another. Yeah, that's fine. You can go ahead and do that. You're saying I can go, but I don't feel like that's what you're saying. But when you are knowing somebody, you can ask a question like, hey, what's going on? And when you gather with people, it's one of the first things you have. How are you guys doing? Especially if you've not seen them in a while. And if Jesus had been knocking on the door, it means he ain't seen you in a while. And the first thing he's going to do is like, hey, how are you doing? Intimacy with God, number one, is he starts to restore our life. He starts to restore our life to a place of healing. So what happens to the woman at the well? He shows up, he's asking for water, not quite a meal, but at least we're starting with something that'll quench our thirst. Can you give me a drink of water? Let's have a conversation. And she's like, why are you talking to me? He's caring for her. He said, hey, if you knew who was here, you'd ask for living water, I would give it to you. And she said, give me this water. And he says, hey, go get your 5 husbands. Or no, go get your husband. And she says, sir, I am not married. And he says, you've answered correctly. In fact, the guy you're living with now is not your husband. You've had 5. What's he doing? He's not calling out her sin, and he's not judging her. He's touching the pain in her heart. And he's saying, in that first conversation, I want to heal you. And when you give your life to Jesus, that's one of the first things that happens. You immediately have some type of healing effect upon your heart. And intimacy with God is him restoring your heart to a place of healing. And the second thing that the intimacy of God is, it's our heart coming alive fully to his glory. What does that mean? It means to be your true self. We actually don't know our heart. There's a battle for your heart. If you don't know there's a battle for your heart, you're going to blame God, you're going to blame your spouse, you're going to blame your boss, you're going to blame your sister, your brother, your mom and dad. You're going to blame somebody for the battle that's going on in your heart, and that battle never ceases. Until we step into eternity, the enemy's going to keep speaking the lies to you. And we are actually unfamiliar with our heart, and we need Jesus to speak to our identity so that we come fully alive. So he heals you. And then he steps into you. He causes you to step into your purpose. You start discovering some callings. You start coming alive again. That happens through intimacy with him. So intimacy is him healing your heart. Intimacy is causing your heart to come alive again. And then lastly, intimacy is a lifelong process of encountering God's voice. None of us are fully healed. None of us are too far gone. We are constantly going to be in process, and it's a daily battle. But you got to know you're unfamiliar with your heart. Jeremiah 17 says the human heart is more deceitful above all other things, and it takes God to know it. But you're going to be in process. It's going to be a battle that you go through every day. But here's the good news. You've already won the battle. He's just knocking at the door like, hey, if you let me in, I'm going to tell you who you are. I'm going to give you some purpose. I'm going to give you your identity. I'm going to pull you out of the things that are complicated in your heart. I'm going to set you free. But it's a process. And what happens in the process, the most intimate moments that I've ever had with the Lord have always been very vulnerable moments. When I get very honest and very raw with God. And he gives me a revelation. He doesn't fix the problem per se. He gives us a revelation. See, most of us, when we seek God or we try to find intimacy with him, we tell him our problems and we're problem focused. And we want a solution. God, here's what I'm going through. Here's what I would like you to do. Send a check in the mail, cause him to love me. I don't know, whatever your thing is. And you're going to God and you're seeking solutions. And Jesus said, don't worry about the things in your life you need solutions for. Seek first the kingdom and all these other things will be added to you. Why first? First in the Greek means it's the first of priority, the chief among everything else. So if the chief thing going on in your mind is your solution, that's ordering your life the wrong way. But if the chief thing comes to putting Jesus first in your life and seeking his heart for you, what begins to happen is it reorders your life under the kingdom, and then he gives you this promise. Then all other things are added to you. And that is simply a revelation. Just about 2 years ago, my wife and I, we've always enjoyed riding motorcycles, and we were on a trip in West Virginia. And we're our first day there, we're riding with a group of people. A deer jumps out in front of my wife. It hits her, causes her to throttle the bike because the deer hit her arm, and she throttles and just rides the side of a guardrail for like 40 feet, just slamming and slamming, slamming. She's essentially can't move. She gets thrown off the bike. The bike tumbles across the other side of the road, and she's laying on the ground. She's asking me multiple times, am I dying? All right, now in that moment, you could go to the Lord, and this is what we wrestle with. Lord, where were you? Why did you allow this to happen? And we wanted a solution. Can you heal quickly? Can you move in our life quickly? And we wondered, where was God in the midst of this? And then that fall, so that's happened in the start of September. In October, I'm at a prayer retreat. Pastor Jerry was there with the other pastors in the network. It was the last night of the retreat. It was about a 3-day thing, and we're just praying on our knees. And the speaker that night said, hey, the Lord's going to give you ask the Lord for a revelation. So I'm sitting there, and the thing I've been wrestling, I was depressed because my wife isn't walking. It took her multiple months. She had the accident in September. She didn't start walking until January. So that's a very intimate, complicated life for 4 months. And we're leading a church. We're launching a campus. All of these things are going on. And we were saying, where was God? And then how are we going to get through this? We need a solution. So I'm at this event, and then the speaker says, God asked the Lord for revelation, and of who he said who you are. It was about an identity. The Lord didn't speak to me about identity. I said, Lord, what do you want to say to me? And I seen a wall of angels along that guardrail. It was on a mountain. If the guardrail wasn't there, she would have went over. And a saddlebag essentially saved her from being very mangled. She had 2 reconstructive surgeries, got 9 pins and screws in her ankle, like 2 reconstructive surgeries. She cut every limb on her body but one. So it was a terrible accident. We wanted the questions answered. Where were you? Why this happened? And I seen a wall of angels, and I hit my knees in that moment, and I started weeping before the Lord. He didn't fix the situation. I didn't get all my questions answered, but I tell you what, I got a revelation. I didn't need a solution. You actually don't need solutions. You need a revelation from God into your life. And the revelation will give you strength for the thing you're going through. Revelation, that's what it does. It strengthens you to endure. It strengthens you into persecution. This is why you want intimacy with God. Because your heart will tell you, God left me. God wasn't there. If he loved me, he wouldn't let me go into this accident. And you start wrestling, and that's what your heart's doing. But then you get a revelation like, whoa, you were protecting me? You were there? Now we have a strength to go through months of healing. So intimacy with God is getting that type of revelation, not solutions. Often we just go to God with our problems. And if I go to my dad and I say, I'm driving a car with my dad, and I'm like, hey, something's going on in my life or my marriage maybe, and I share that with him, he's going to speak to me about it. But you know what's better is me just hanging out with my dad. Marriage stuff might come up, life stuff might come up, and it's out of that time with my father that the intimacy is produced. So we must move from solution-based thinking and problem-type prayers, like just praying our problems. He wants to know your problems, but he wants to sit and dine and linger in your life. So how do we do that? Well, number one, you got to want it. How do you develop a intimacy with God is you must desire a close proximity to him. He's knocking. He's knocking on the door of your heart. He's not standing at a distance, actually, but you got to be the one to open that door. Say, yeah, I want that. I want you to come in. He's going to sit outside, and I think the Lord, if he's been calling on you, you've been thinking about him, that's him knocking on your heart. If you came to church today thinking about God and not been here in a while, that's Jesus knocking on your heart. He's saying, hey, let me in. Let me in. And you got to say yes. He says, open the door. And if we want intimacy with God and want him to linger in our life, because that is what you want. Every one of us wants the life God offers us. We want that freedom. We want to know who we are. And the way we get it is desiring a close proximity with Jesus. James says this in James 4. James was actually the brother of Jesus. He says, submit to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw near, close proximity. Draw near, open the door, and he will draw near to you. So it isn't that God's absent. It's actually a desire and a willingness to draw near to him. Can I come down on the floor without messing up the live stream? I can. Pastor Jerry, can you go stand over there by the register? All right, I don't know what camera is on. I hope it's not you. Now, I'm not Jesus, but let's just pretend that. And I'm here, and I'm just banging. And if Pastor Jerry wants more of Jesus in his life, he's got to take that step, take a step. And the moment you do, there's this, he's pulling in. So he keeps knocking, he says something, and you take another step. This is how it is with the Lord. It's not him. Sometimes he does intervene and he comes up, but most of the time he's waiting for you. We're sitting here waiting on the Lord. Like, when are you going to show up? He's like, I'm just waiting for you to take the first step. Thank you, Pastor Jerry. That's how we draw near to the Lord. And that desire to proximity can actually come out of a place of frustration. I went into ministry at 27 years old. It's 2002. Don't do the math. I am 50 now. So it means I'm no longer young. I'm part of the old group. I actually got, what was that thing they sent me? The AARP. And Jen's like, you should fill this out. Look at all these cool things you can get. And I'm like, I'm not filling that out because I don't feel old. But anyway, so Jenny's 49, so she's still young. She got a couple more months. But what was I saying? Okay, so I went in the ministry at 27 years old. And within 8 years, and the church grew. We're probably 1,000 people at that time. The church, Pastor Jerry was there at that time. The church is growing, and our marriage as well. So nothing's like wrong in my life. But I'm singing these songs because I was the worship pastor, and I'm thinking like, I no longer believe this is a reality. I don't think God's a healer because I'm not seeing it. And so I'm singing these songs. I'm frustrated with the Lord, and I'm telling him, where are you? Where are you? And I'm laying on my bed. This was back in 2007. So it was like a 2 or 3 years, but I'm getting very real with the Lord. I want close proximity, but the Lord will sometimes wrestle with you like Jacob. And Jacob says, I'm not going to let go until you bless me. And so I was wrestling with the Lord for a couple of years. And I'm laying, Jen's sleeping in bed. I'm reading this book. And this book is a story about this missionary guy in China who had a ball of light lead, because there were no like city lights. I mean, these were villages in the mountains of China. And so he said he didn't know how to get back to his village, and a ball of light guided him. And I read that. You think I'd be excited. I read that and I was mad. I put the book on my chest and I said to the Lord, see, that's what I mean. You're doing all these miracles for everybody, but not me, which is reinforcing the lie that God has forgotten me. I put that book on my chest, and the moment I say that, I have an appearing of the Lord in my room, not a physical appearing, but undeniably the presence of God falling on me like a blanket. He speaks about 5 or 7 words to me that I will never forget. Joy floods my spirit. And I was in a moment of thinking, I'm just going to quit ministry because I can't be fake. I believed in God. I wasn't denying God. I wasn't deconstructing my faith or anything, but I was just frustrated with the level of encounters that I was having with the Lord. And that was one of the first wrestlings. 2 years go by, it's 2009. I'm in a place of depression now. Take it to my pastor. Pastor Lee says, listen, I'm going to send you on this event in Texas. You know, I'm not sure what it will do for you, but it helps people recalibrate. Maybe you should go. So I go on this event in 2009, 2 years later from that experience in my bedroom, and I encounter the Lord. That kept me going for a couple of years. It was a revelation that helped me endure another 24 months. But now I'm in this season of depression, and I'm still thinking, like, I went on that event in Texas, make this thought. I went on that event in Texas thinking, if the Lord doesn't do something in my life, I'm going to step away and become a truck driver. So I go into there. I know it's funny, but it's real. Or run a campground. One of those two things. They both feel like an adventure, maybe. 3 days in, other men on this event, they're talking about like all these cool experiences they're having, and I'm having none. I'm just like, where is God? And I'm angry that everybody else, again, reinforcing the lie, God forgot about me. God forgot about me. It's what the enemy does with every single negative event in your life. He keeps reinforcing the same lie. Either you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not done enough. He's forgotten about you. He loves everybody else but you. And every negative event keeps reinforcing that lie. And I was looking at my life, and I'm looking at these, and I'm getting angry at everybody else because it's reinforcing the lie. He's speaking to him and him and him and him, but not me. And what I'm hearing is what the enemy is saying, see, God forgot about you. Day 4 is a fast day. I'm on my fast day, and I'm about 3-4 hours into it, and I'm not having a good time. And I'm telling him, what am I doing on this stupid ranch in Texas? You know, where are you? Same kind of conversation that I had back in 27. And out of that wrestling of frustration, the Lord made this statement to me. He said, you never let me love you. And I said, oh, no, I know you love me. He said, well, you never let me love you. And you know that I love you, but you never let me love you, and there's a difference. See, I knew God loved me. He has to. But I didn't know God liked me. And that was the first time he unlocked my heart, and I've encountered this intimacy with the Lord, and I'm like, this is what I want. I had a close proximity to God. Because I took time to slow down and encounter Jesus. I desired that close proximity, and I got it. The first step of intimacy is you got to want it. You have to desire that. The second step is you got to slow down long enough to encounter God. God is not in a hurry. And what if your stress, your anxiety, your depression, like me, isn't really that God is close, that it's really that we're just moving so fast, we're not hearing him? What if that's the problem? What if that's the reason for your unhappiness? We're just moving so fast in our life is from one moment to the next and this appointment to that appointment, and it's just one holy smear, unholy smear of just events in our life. And listen, we are not meant to go as fast as we've been going in our society. Technology promised us that we'd have more time. You like when I was around to see this whole thing happen, because I was born in 74. So we had computers in my school growing up, and it had a floppy disk the literally size of a 33 record to get that thing turned on. It just had a green text, and that was it. And you just thought that was amazing. But I remember them saying in the 80s, like, oh, when this happens and technology develops, we're going to be able to have more time. We'll have computers doing our jobs for us, and we'll have downtime. What really has happened, we become a slave to technology. Some of you got on TikTok last night, and you hung there for 2 hours, and then you get that little person who pops up. It's like, hey, hold on, you've been watching this for way too long. Has anyone ever had that happen? You're not going to admit it. You're in church. I guess I'm the only one. You cannot encounter God with a hurried soul. Psalms 37, verse 7 says, be still. In the presence of the Lord, he's knocking. How do you open that door? Hey, slow down. I'm not going to have a fast food drive-through McDonald's meal with you. I want to come into your home. I don't want an Applebee's meal where we're done in an hour. I want to sit in your home. And I want to be in your presence. Be still in the presence of the Lord and wait patiently for him to act. It's not going to come on a screen, but Psalms 39 verse 6 says that we're merely moving shadows and all our busy rushing ends in nothing. If you want to know you're loved and find your identity and start walking in new levels of freedom and get your soul healed and get those revelations so that you do know what to do with the things you're going through and how to endure that, we have to desire it and we have to have a willingness to stop. Well, what does that look like? One of the things I teach my church, if they're new to like maybe encountering the Lord, I say, well, I call it the 3 5s. Do these 3 things for 5 minutes. 5 minutes, read his word. 5 minutes, put on a worship song on Spotify and just worship God for 5 minutes. And then 5 minutes, sit in prayer. And say nothing. It says, be still and wait. He'll act, but he acts in the waiting. He acts in the pausing. When I'm in my bed laying down, I'm not on the computer. Like, it was in that moment of pausing. 3 days, everyone else in this event, I think it took the Lord 3 days to detox my soul before I could hear him on day 4. And we talk about intimacy with God, and we tend to think of that maybe in terms of like a marriage, and it is like that in terms of like I got to spend time with my wife to like know her. But could you just imagine if the pausing together was only in the morning, like just, all right, we got 10 minutes today, Jen, let's do this, let's talk through, and then you go about your day and you never have another moment in your marriage. You wouldn't call that intimacy. The Lord is knocking on doors. I want to sit in your life. And the way we do it is we slow down, pause maybe multiple times throughout the day. Pick 3 different times and pause, but set a timer for 2 minutes. I'm going to cultivate an awareness of God. I'm just going to sit for 2 minutes. Now, I've started doing this, and I started out with 2 minutes. You figure out 2 minutes. First it's like, God, this is taking forever. And then you're like 2 minutes, and then you're like, okay, I like this. I want to do 5 minutes. And now I'm up to, sometimes I'll sit for 30 minutes in the presence of the Lord. And that's where you're going to get these moments. If you want intimacy with God, 1, you have to want it. to slow down long enough. The last thought is this, and I really won't teach on this a whole lot, but we must cultivate the same practices that Jesus did. Jesus actually offers us a way out of our meaningless life. He offers us a way out of all the things that are going on, the weariness you're facing, the anxiety. He offers you a way out, and it's to do the things that he did. Jesus is God in the flesh, Emmanuel, God with us. He shows up and he teaches us, here's how to be human. Here's how to do your life. Do the things that I did. Matthew 11, he says, come to me. I'm knocking on the door. Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Learn from me. And I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, my burden is light. Jesus lived in agricultural times. So when he's saying this to those who are hearing it, they got what he was saying. A yoke is two animals, two ox that are connected together, and they would have to be the same. They couldn't be unequally yoked. And what that meant was you couldn't put a smaller ox with a larger one, because the larger one would outpace it and jerk. The yoke would literally jerk them. This is what's happening in your life when you're struggling with addictions. You're getting yoked up with the wrong thing, and the enemy's promising you, hey, do this, have a good time, and it's jerking your life. And you're like, what is happening? Well, you're yoked up with the wrong thing. And Jesus says, yoke up with my life, I'll get you a different pace. I'm going to give you a different rhythm. Here's what Jesus did. Every Sunday, he was in the synagogue, or every Sabbath on Saturdays, he was in the synagogue. We know that it said he often withdrew and went to lonely places, which meant he found an isolated place. It's what he means when he says, go into the secret place. There, in the secret, in the slowing down, there the Lord will reward you. This is how we produce intimacy with God. It's a hard thing to teach in 30 minutes because it is a cultivating. And the practices of Jesus, you're practicing is like a trellis of maybe what they would grow grapes on. There's posts throughout the field, and then there's several wires that are going. You're practicing are these posts. Church on Sunday, community group here, reading my scriptures in the morning, pausing in the day. These are different trellises that you're posting in your life. And what happens, you don't notice it right away. But then all of a sudden, there's this thing that sprouts up and it starts growing vines around this trellis. It's how it works with the Lord. This is why it's cultivated a lot like a garden. That's why it's hard to teach in 30 minutes, because you have to, essentially, you got to tell people, put these posts in your life. Put some stakes in the ground. I'm going to pray every day. I'm going to pause throughout the day and just bring an awareness to God. I'm going to be in a community with other Christians, brother. I'm going to go to church every Sunday, and I'm going to get real with God. And you start putting these certain posts in your life, and then you will start seeing it grow into your life. But you got to want it. You got to cultivate it. You got to slow down to do it. We live in a culture that doesn't let us do that. You have to go against a culture. And I get it, because many of us say we don't have time. And it's true. You don't have time. You have to make time. You have to make time. Make time for Jesus and watch what it'll do for your life. One practical way in your sitting with Jesus, if you would bow your head and close your eyes. One practical thing in sitting with Jesus is simply asking a question. And it could be, God, how do you see me? And sit for 5 minutes listening in your mind. He speaks into our mind, our thoughts. It's how you know you hear God. When you hear a thought that's smarter than you, it's probably not you, it's God. You could ask him, what do you want to say to me? Father, would you show me a picture of love? Ask questions. If you knew who was here, you would ask. Church, Jesus is in the room, so I want to take 30 seconds and just ask right now. Lord, how do you see me? Some of you are seeing a picture. Some of you are seeing a memory. Some of you are hearing a word or a phrase. Some of you, nothing's coming to mind, and you can just simply take that as just Jesus sitting passively with you and ministering to your heart. And I don't want to make the assumption that everyone in the room is a follower of Jesus. I would like to pray for you. If you're here, this is maybe new for you, or maybe you once made a decision to follow Jesus, but you're no longer in close proximity. You're like the church in Ephesus, and he's telling you, return to your first love. And if either one of those are you, I want to pray for you. I'm not going to embarrass you, but I'm going to count to 3. And when I say 3, I want you to lift your hand. And by lifting your hand, you're saying, yeah, that's me. I'm ready to follow Jesus. I want to be in close proximity. By lifting your hand, you're saying, I'm ready to do that. 1, if you came to church thinking about God, it means he's pursuing you. 2, your heart's probably pounding and your mind said something like, that's you, lift your hand. I want to tell you, that's not you. That's the voice of the Holy Spirit. Today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your heart. Be bold. 3, quickly lift up your hand. Many hands. Keep them up just for a moment. Thank you. I see those hands. Thank you. Many hands have gone up. I want to pray together, church. We'll pray this quickly, but God is going to meet us in this moment. You can go ahead and put your hands down. Say this with me. Let's all pray it together. Father, I realize I need you. And Jesus, I want to be in close proximity of you. So I invite you into my heart. I ask you to forgive me of my sins and heal me of my brokenness. Teach me how to follow you, because I'm ready. In Jesus' name, amen. Hey, I know I've gone a little bit over, but I have a word I want to share with the church. It's okay with that. Will anyone give me at least 1 minute? Okay. So, all right. I heard this when I was praying for you this morning. I just asked the Lord if he had a word for you guys. And he told me you're in a kairos moment, Radiant Ludington. And kairos in the Greek means this now thing is happening, and now time. 2 Corinthians 6:2 says, I tell you, now is the time, kairos, of God's favor. Now is the day of salvation. You're in a now moment, church, with this launch of Radiant Heart. And the Lord told me that there's several kinds of people in the room. 1, your leaders, and your job is to help other people see that vision of reaching a city, because you're in a now moment. Now's the time to communicate that vision and to live that vision. He also told me some in the room, it's slowly dawning on you. It's not a bad thing. It's just that it's slowly coming on you. Accept that. You're going to be one church in 2 locations now. This is a now moment, and this thing in heart is the Lord. Some of you have questioned it. But in 2 Corinthians, it says it's the day of salvation. And the Lord wanted me to tell you, don't miss this opportunity and the movement that God has for you, because this is a kairos moment for Radiant Church Ludington. The other thing that he spoke to me, Pastor Jerry and Rachel took me to this reservoir, and he said, this is who you are. You are a reservoir to this community of God's love and power, a life-giving flow to this region. And they were telling me that this reservoir pulls in water every night and then pushes it back out into Lake Michigan. And this is what you're doing. You are gathering and you're being filled up with the power of God, but you're to release it back into your community. And as you gather, as you pray, as you get together, as you cultivate the presence of God, you're filling up. And we drove by it on the way here this morning. This thing looked like a mountain. I didn't see it. We're driving up. It was huge. But from a distance, I don't know what highway I was on, but I could see it off in a distance. That thing looked like a mountain. Radiant Church, you are a mountain to this community. You will not be ignored. They might not know might not know that the energy that's coming, the power of God that's coming to life is because of you gathering, but that is what's happening. You are a mountain to this community that will not be ignored. And I believe you're going to be a catalyst for revival. Thank you.